What's going on, everybody? My name is Johnny Bandon, and today we're going to be finishing up Domain 1.2 in our Network Plus N10-009 course. So let's go ahead and get started. So last video, if you're following this in order, let me move my face a little bit out of the way here. A little bit smaller. Okay, we're here to learn, right? Not look at me. We went over the physical and virtual appliances, and now we're going to go over the applications and functions to finish up Domain 1.2. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the content delivery network. So imagine you start an e-commerce service, or maybe even a low-grade streaming service, maybe even like a Plex server, if you know what that is. And now you start serving hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of users. Okay, so you're serving these users, and maybe it's to one geographical location. And now you're expanding. Where you were on the West Coast, now you're going to the East Coast and the Midwest of America, and you start hearing complaints of latency. Well, one thing you can do to cache your static content or dynamic content even across different geographical areas to help with the latency to your website. It doesn't have to be a streaming service, right? I just use that as a common example. Maybe it's just your e-commerce site. We can use the content delivery network to actually deliver that content, like web pages, images, and videos, to users based on their geographic location. So we can still have our main server over here. Let's say that's our main server. We're not doing any other complexity like high availability in different regions and zones in the cloud. We just have a server that we're hosting maybe on something like Bluehost, or maybe it's a PaaS service like Heroku app. Whatever the case may be. And instead of replicating that app using an anycast IP address, messing with global DNS settings, and putting that in different VM instances in maybe a multi-cloud environment, you want an easier, simpler solution like CDN. Well, with that content delivery network, we can now have these hops and geographical locations that will serve up a lot of the web pages and images to the users, while the application functionality still may sit here. But a lot of that front-end stuff that has to load up can be closer to that user. So it gives you latency reduction and improved reliability. So CDNs reduce the time it takes for content to reach users by caching content on servers located closer to the user's geographic location. So again, this is going to be content that's able to, be cached, right? So if you've ever hosted a blog before, if you ever had a WordPress site, that's what we used to run on WordPress. A very common website builder. There was just plugins and apps that did CDN for you. I would go to the WordPress plugin store. I can't remember. This was a year ago when we moved off WordPress, and you would just be yeah, enable CDN, and then that would cache it. Whatever application or plugin I was using on my WordPress site would go do that content delivery network, right, and cache my website in different geographic locations. So that is a content delivery network. So for the exam, right, you want to remember some key terms. It's latency reduction and has improved reliability for your websites. Okay, now let's talk about a VPN. Now, coming from a network engineering background, my space is still pretty big here, cutting off the text. Let me fix that. Okay. Coming from a network engineering background, a network automation, security background, VPNs are something we can dive deep into. But we're just going to cover some of the highlights for the Network Plus course. So what does a virtual private network do? One, it hides our original layer 3 IP header. So it's going to do IP address masking. So if I were to draw that out, right, and let's say we're going to use a technology called generic route encapsulation, kind of a more enterprise-grade VPN solution than what you would use at home, probably at home, if you're using VPN, you have Nord or PIA or OpenVPN, something like that. Let's talk about GRE as an example of how a VPN does IP address masking. So let's say this is you right here, and you have your source IP or your IP address, and you want to talk to 8.8.8.8. So you build your layer 3 header. So you build your layer 3 header. You have your source IP, your destination IP. So let's say your source IP yourself, right, is going to be 10.1.1.1, and destination IP is Google. Well, let's say if you connect to a VPN service. When you need to talk to 8.8.8.8, instead of this being the IP address that the server is going to see in 8.8.8.8, actually, hold on. I'm just going to actually get rid of my face here. Instead of this IP address being what the server sees here, if we do something like GRE encapsulation, what it's going to do is create a whole new IP header that's going to encapsulate this. Okay? So that GRE header, if we're using a technology like generic route encapsulation, is going to give yourself a new source IP. I said new and I wrote the same one. It's going to give yourself a new source IP. So what that server is actually going to see, it's just going to see this. And when you're transiting the internet, because imagine there's going to be a bunch of internet hops here, right? A bunch of ISPs that you may go through. They're not going to see your original IP address. They're just going to see that source IP. So it does IP address masking. Now, a solution like GRE, it provides us a virtual private network. But another kind of additional thing that we start doing with the VPNs is adding encryption. So in an enterprise grade solution, what we started to add to GRE tunnels is something like IPsec, the security suite. And that's going to be Internet Key Exchange version 1, version 2, IP1 and 2, where we started to add confidentiality. We started encrypting our data in transit. We started putting authentication headers. So with IPsec, we started to add a authentication header and an ESP header, right? Encapsulation, security payload, authentication header that gave us things like confidentiality, which is encryption, right? And it gave us things like non-repudiation. So VPNs can give us protection. It can encrypt our data payloads. It can mask our original IP headers. It can also give us some authentication and non-repudiation. Another solution that we use for VPNs, because you're thinking about this, you're like, oh yeah, I connect to a VPN if I go to Starbucks, if I'm browsing the web, because I want to protect my data. That's something I know. But the original solutions for VPNs, maybe not the original, but from an enterprise perspective, VPNs were originally just meant to connect distant networks together to seem like they're a single hop away. So what do I mean by this? So let's go over some two major types of VPNs. Now within these major VPN types, we have different technologies that can enable site-to-site or remote access. I have a Ubiquiti router and I use WireGuard to do remote access VPNs. Unify also has their own native solution for remote access VPNs. For site-to-site VPNs, you can have a layer 2 point-to-point VPN. You could have IPsec. You could have GRE. There's a lot of different site-to-site solutions. For remote access, you can have an SSL VPN. You could do something like Open VPN. My personal favorite, you could have WireGuard VPN. Okay? Now these two major types have different ways to accomplish it, right? Different technologies I just listed out. But let's break them down. So site to site, and this is going to be maybe a typical deployment here. We're going to have a hub or an HQ, and that's located in San Francisco. And let's say we have a couple spoke offices. One in, I think, HDX is Houston when I made this slide, and STL, I think, is St. Louis, right? Well, they're going to have enterprise users here, okay? Enterprise users that are have a private IP address space. And maybe those users need access to the data center sitting over here at HQ that has our SharePoint portal. Maybe it has our CMS, our customer management systems. So how can we directly connect to those? Well, this web server farm may be private IP address too. So obviously none of those users here or this web server farm is going to be routable on the internet if it's just within our intranet, our enterprise. So what we can do between the hub and these spokes is we can deploy site-to-site VPNs where we could have something like a DMVPN solution. We're talking Cisco, a Flex VPN solution. Even SD-WAN technically does this now because SD-WAN is built off IPsec tunnels and OMP if we're doing Cisco Viptela. But anyways, And that's going to connect sites. So typically site to site is going to be between router to routers, router to firewalls, firewall to firewalls, and it's going to connect sites. Now with the remote access VPN, you're still trying to accomplish the same thing. You have a worker here that needs access to your enterprise network because it needs to access those enterprise solutions. It needs access to local file share to upload, whatever the case may be, right? So you have that remote worker that's sitting at the coffee shop, that's sitting at home that needs access to the enterprise. So what do? Well, we set up, and this could be like an SASE solution now. This could be your firewall. This could just be your router. Like I said, my Ubiquiti router does WireGuard. And we set up a VPN client on our remote worker here that's going to give them access into the enterprise. So now this remote worker, all it needs is internet access, and now he or she can access the enterprise. It's any open ISP internet connection. As long as we have that VPN client up and working, we can always access the enterprise. With site to site, it's built for that router specifically. So like users here, they have to be in the office if it's not a remote worker with the remote access VPN. They have to come into the office here to access their enterprise resources in San Francisco. Okay, now this is just another picture of it, a little bit zoomed in, right? Because for our self-paced course, we give out these slides. Another thing we're going to talk about is a split tunnel versus a full tunnel. So whether we're talking remote access or site to site, we can also set up our VPNs to direct traffic a certain way. And let's go over that. So with a full tunnel VPN, let's say this is remote access. This is a remote worker, a remote access VPN. If this user wants to go to youtube.com and it has a VPN up, so it's like, hey, it's work hours, so from VPN. So from 9 to 5, they have to be at their computer, and we know it, they're working because they're going to be on the VPN, accessing, their Office 365 environment, whatever the case may be, okay? Well, if we set up that remote access VPN as a full tunnel deployment, even if that user's browsing things that are non-enterprise, YouTube, google.com, anything that's non-enterprise, the traffic's always going to go out to our enterprise network and then back down to whatever that destination is. If it's YouTube, back up and then back over to the client. Now, this is a way to do it, and we're not going to get into the pros and cons here because it's just a Network Plus class. I just want to teach you what they are, about VPNs. But this is a solution where you probably have a little bit more control. You can always see what your users are doing. It kind of does expose you a little bit more, creates a larger threat vector. But with that split tunnel, if let's say the enterprise network is this subnet, 10.0.0.0/16, and this computer creates a layer 3 header, and the destination IP doesn't fall within that, so let's say it's 9.9.9.9, guess what? In a split tunnel VPN, regular traffic that's not destined to the enterprise network is going to go out your regular internet connection. So it'll go out your wireless NIC, or if you have an Ethernet cord into your little home router, it's going to use the regular internet connection. But the moment we get a packet with the layer 3 headers destination IP towards any IP just within that enterprise network subnet, 10.0.0.5, we're going to go over our VPN to access those enterprise resources. Okay, another huge topic that we kind of just, are summarizing in a single slide is QoS. So quality of service is a mechanism that we use when we have congestion on our outbound link, so our demarcation point out to the internet, or even internally if we have a big campus network to our web server farms. QoS is a tool that we can use to prioritize traffic, to grant some users higher priority, or to grant some traffic higher priority than others, so that we can have high availability for that traffic. So all that to say, I have a 3-hour QoS course on my CCNA that I can link in the description below if you want to check it out, that deep dives into this. But QoS does these 4 major functions that I have written up here. Traffic prioritization, so it assigns priority levels. It's going to allow you to do bandwidth management, so you can set rules on that outbound device, your internet gateway, your router, that says, hey, traffic that's tagged with this DSCP or IP precedence, AF21, we'll just keep it simple. Traffic that's tagged as high priority, I don't want to get into the weeds of this, is going to get 80% of our bandwidth or 70% of our bandwidth. Traffic tagged with medium priority is going to get 30% of our bandwidth. And then low priority is just going to be, the rest. It's just going to be, okay, if the bandwidth's not being 100% utilized, you'll be able to go. But if we see congestion, we're going to police that traffic to say, hey, we have congestion, so now we're going to implement our QoS, and this high priority traffic is going to get 70%. So that's what QoS does, right? In the simplest of terms. Policing, traffic shaping, traffic prioritization, traffic marking. And it's going to help us with our latency and jitter reduction and help us manage our bandwidth if we set it up like that. So remember, the important thing with QoS that a lot of engineers, sometimes you grow up in networks that always have it, and you always assume you need QoS. But QoS is only needed when there is congestion. So obviously, if you have dedicated circuits, T1, T3 lines, and now you're trying to do like software as a service, cloud-based connections, and you're noticing like a lot of bandwidth utilization, a lot of top talkers, QoS may be needed. But if you're on like a fiber business link and you have 20 users in your small office and you have that gig up and a gig down, QoS is probably not going to be needed unless you're doing something crazy, right? At that small office. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about is the TTL field in the IP header. That's our time to live. So all that's saying, this is just packet lifetime management like I have written up here. So in that header, that IP header of our packet, we have a hop limit. That for every hop is going to increment down or decrement, get one less per hop, right? That TTL. And it starts at 255. So for every hop, that TTL is going to go down one. And if we ever reach 0, that packet's going to be considered dead, right? So a lot of times this TTL helps us with like loops. So let's just say for some reason we had this connection like this, and our packets just kept getting routed like this. Eventually our TTL will get decremented down to 0. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's going to go down to 0, right? And then that packet's going to die. So that's the TTL, that time to live field in our IP header here. So it's a routing loop prevention. It also has a trace out utility where we can actually utilize that TTL field in trace route to see every single hop. So we can do a trace route from like a host to a destination and see every hop along the way, the IP addresses along the way. All right, awesome. So now let's do our quiz. Okay, now let's do our domain 1.2.2 quiz. So question 1, which of the following is a key function of a virtual private network? So key function, so I'm going to go with A. It's not its only function, but it is a key function, encrypting data to ensure it remains confidential while transmitted over public networks. All right, question 2. What is the main goal of implementing quality of service in a network? So I'm going to go with B, to ensure that critical network traffic receives priority over less important traffic. That is one of the goals of QoS, right? To prioritize traffic, to make sure we're doing that management if we have congestion. Question 3. The time to live field in IP packet is primarily used for which purpose? So I'm going to go with C here. That's going to be to specify the maximum number of hops a packet can take before being discarded. And that is what it's one of its purposes. And it starts at 255. It can also be used in traceroute. Last question. What is the primary purpose of a content delivery network? And that's going to be C. To deliver content, such as web pages and videos, to users based on their geographic location. All right, awesome. So we got 100%. I want to thank you for viewing, and do not forget to like and subscribe.